All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me today, and let's go ahead and get started on our masterclass. So let me introduce myself if you don't already know me, but I'm Allison Ubanik, and I'm the owner of Early Bird Wellness. And did you know in the last 20 years that heart disease has actually declined by 7%, but Alzheimer's has increased by 145? Well, both of my parents had Alzheimer's disease, and it was difficult. It was really difficult. And after helping them and wanting to save my own brain and not having to put my family through what I went through to take care of them, I went back to school and I became nationally board certified in holistic nutrition and an Amen Clinic's brain health professional. And I'm also a functional blood chemistry analyst. And that's where I learned that without gut health, your brain is at risk. And it changed my life. Like, it gave me hope for my own future and the future of others. Now, with this information, I now help midlifers who are already, feeling exhausted and swimming in brain fog and suffering with GI distress. They may have things from like gas, bloating, indigestion, unreliable, unpredictable bowels, whatever. It'd be like just those terrible things. Like, they're not living the life that they want. But I help them get their energy back and restore proper digestive function and have clear thinking without medications. And what really excites me about what I do is that over 80% of my clients get dramatic results from their symptoms. And some of them have even told me that I have saved their lives. And if not literally, then them being able to enjoy their life again. So in a nutshell, the message that I am sharing is poor gut health contributes to the likelihood of dementia. And I would be honored if you help me get this message out there. And let's change the direction of brain health. And with all that said, let's get started onto today's masterclass. Just some quick housekeeping notes that we need to do, which is all information contained here within is for educational purposes. The information is not intended to replace medical care, diagnose, treat, prevent, mitigate, or cure disease. As always, consult with a health professional before attempting any self-health program. Today's masterclass is Produce Storage 101. Fresh produce can be expensive, and there's nothing more annoying than getting to your fruits and vegetables that one day too late when they're already no longer edible. But you already know that because that's why you signed up to take this class. And over this masterclass, we will be exploring tips and tricks that you can use to extend the shelf life of your produce. So let's get started. Which fruits and veggies would like to sit on your kitchen counter in your fruit bowl? And which ones are sensitive to the cold and actually stay fresher when they're stored at room temperature? These include bananas and basil, cucumbers, eggplant, garlic, grapefruit, green beans, lemons, limes, onions, oranges, potatoes, summer squash, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, watermelon, winter squash, and zucchini. If you've been storing these fruits and veggies in your fridge, they're taking up valuable space. So keep them on the counter instead. Storing produce in plain sight will also remind you to eat them so they don't get lost in the fridge, which I think sometimes happens. These types of produce prefer being in the chillier temperature, right? They stay fresh longer when they live in the fridge. Things like apples and asparagus, blueberries, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, cherries, cilantro, corn, dark leafy greens, grapes, leeks, lettuce, parsley, peas, pomegranate, raspberries, and strawberries. Some fruits and veggies are more temperamental and they prefer to be stored on the counter until they're ripe. And then we move them into the fridge. Temperamental items include apricots and avocados, kiwi fruit, mangoes, melons, nectarines, papaya, peaches, pears, pineapples, and plums. So many of the peas, right? I thought it was funny when I was making the list. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many peas that are temperamental. Determining whether to store your produce in or out of the refrigerator is really half the battle. The other factor that you have to consider is whether specific fruits and vegetables should be stored together or should they be separated, right? Are they friends or are they friends and foes? As a rule of thumb, keep those apples and avocados and stone fruits, pears, bananas, and tomatoes away from other fruits and veggies, especially those green leafy vegetables. The ethylene, the gas that fruits and vegetables release, can really speed up the ripening process into hyperdrive. And those gas producers are things like apricots and apples and avocados and bananas if they're unripe, and cantaloupe, figs, honeydew, kiwi, nectarines, peaches, plums, and tomatoes. And some of the gas sensitive fruits and veg that really shouldn't be with that list that I just went over would be like bananas if they're already ripe, or broccoli or Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, cucumbers, eggplant, lettuce, peas, peppers, squash, sweet potatoes, and watermelon. If you're looking to get that rock hard avocado ripen in time for Taco Tuesday, the best way to do that is to place it in a paper bag with a ripe banana. And that'll really help speed up that ripening process for you. And you can also do that same trick for things like peaches and plums and apricots. Ethylene is a plant hormone that's often thought as an aging hormone for plants of all kinds. And it makes our produce spoil faster. So keep that in mind, those gas producers. Onions should be kept in a dry, dark space, but separate from fellow dark, dry pantry dwellers, such as potatoes or winter squash. That's one of my favorites, like acorn or butternut or pumpkins, sweet potatoes and watermelon. Why? Because they like to share their scent. And honestly, nobody wants to have watermelon with a tinge of onion. Wouldn't be so great. Onions that are nestled up against potatoes will actually cause those potatoes to wilt and sprout more quickly than they were if they were not around the onions. So keep that in mind with storage. Scallions or green onions oh my gosh, they can go slimy so fast, or they dry out pretty quickly if you don't store them correctly. I'm sure you've all experienced that. Next time you bring a bunch home from the store, place them like in a tall glass, or I love a mason jar personally, or some kind of container, and put about 2 inches of water in there and place the onions in, and then cover them. You can either put like a Ziploc bag over the top or even a damp paper towel, and then place them back in the fridge. And that really keeps them fresh for a really long time. And when you use your scallions, don't throw away that little white root. I don't know if you know this or not, but you can actually take that little white root and stick it in a glass of water or a jar, and it'll resprout within a couple of days. So you can actually just keep repurposing your scallions. What I personally like to do is I just take that little snippet and I'll go plant it out in my garden, and they just grow and grow and grow. It's a really easy way to just recycle. If you have a little pot, you could do it with that as well. Another one that works really great like this too is romaine lettuce, like cutting that romaine and then using that stub or any of those, if it's red leaf, it doesn't really matter, and sticking it out in your garden, and you would be surprised how easy that is to grow. Fruits. Once you slice fruits, they really don't last very long, right? They do so much better when we keep them whole. But fruits like apples and pears and bananas and avocados really should not be sliced ahead of time because they brown so quickly. But if you've got meal prep to do and you need to get it done ahead of time, like let's say apple slices, if you submerge them in a really nice cold bowl of water with a little bit of lemon juice, like say squeeze the juice out of half of a fresh lemon, let them swim around there for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and you can drain those out and they will not brown as quickly, but you don't really have to leave them in that lemon water, just to give you a heads up on that. Avocados contain enzymes that create that brown pigment, and I'm sure we've all seen it when it's exposed to oxygen. And this is why your guacamole looks super unappetizing the day after you make it. So to avoid that, to avoid sliced avocado from going brown, squirt it with a little or lime juice. My preference is really lime juice. That citric acid will buy you at least another day of green. And you can also store sliced avocados in a container with large pieces of onion, because those same gases that make us cry when we're cutting up onions, when you're chopping them up, will actually help prevent your avocado from oxidation, which is that brown. Another option to prevent browning for avocados is to keep the pit, right? Put the pit in the center of your guacamole, or store your cut avocado half with the pit in it. That really does help a lot. Another alternative that you may find helpful is to take your avocado and mash it up and place it in some kind of bowl or container and cover it with a layer of water. This layer will actually protect the avocado from oxygen, so it won't oxidate. And that avocado is so thick and dense, it will not soak up the water. And then you can pour it off before you're getting the water off, before you're going to use it, before you're going to eat it. And when you're done, just add more water back to the top, and it'll keep your avocado really fresh for a long time. That oxidation, maybe you've heard, like even in the health world, when we talk about like oxidation in our bodies, right, cause free radicals. That's the same thing that's true for our fruits and vegetables. So when we see that brown, it's already been oxidized. And if you eat that, it's going to cause oxidation in you and cause free radical damage. Okay, so pass on that. If your fruit is brown, cut it off, trim it off, do whatever you need to do, but do not consume it if it's brown. Spinach and lettuce is wilting too quickly. The most important thing about keeping in mind with these leaves is to really keep them dry. That's the trick. You've got to keep them dry. The best method for washing it and storing leafy greens is to separate the greens from the head and soak them in cold water for about 5 minutes. That really helps rehydrate your greens. And then you can gently swirl them around in the water to just, really wash them well, and then transfer them into a salad spinner and really dry them. And if you don't have a salad spinner, I tell you, make that investment. I'm even going to, not getting paid for any kind of promotion here, but OXO salad spinner is one of my favorite. I've had mine for 17 years, and anytime I've had a problem with it, OXO has just replaced the part. That's how mine has lasted for 17 years. But I can't tell you, it is worth every dollar. That salad spinner is a game changer. But if you don't have a salad spinner, then just take a towel and place your greens in there, wrap them up and gently bounce them up and down to help, get all the water off. Once you do that, place it back on another dry towel, just to make sure they're completely dry. Because if you store your greens wet, they will become a mushy mess overnight. So you don't want to ruin those. Once you've got your greens all rinsed and dried, line the container that you're going to place those in with a paper towel in the inside, and then place them on top of that. I kind of like to use like a harder structured container. That way my greens don't get crushed in the salad drawer, which can happen at times. And that paper towel really help absorb all that extra moisture, which is really beneficial. And this is really a great method if you're doing like if you're doing a lot of food prep for the week, which I know, many of us do. But otherwise, I would really suggest that you really just, if you have the time, to do your greens as you go along instead of pre-doing them. If you buy that mesclun mix, which is something we use quite a bit ourselves, that mesclun mix that comes in its little plastic container, I know you know how fast those can go bad. I would suggest that you empty it when you get home and go ahead and put a paper towel in there and then re-put it back into that clamshell container, because that will really help it from spoiling so quickly. Berries are so delicate and they absolutely hate getting wet. And I found the best way for them is to fill a large bowl with cold water and add a couple of tablespoons of white vinegar. Now, don't worry, they won't taste like the vinegar, but gently let the berries go for a swim in that liquid, and then transfer them onto a paper towel lined plate to dry. Keep them in some kind of strainer, microwave steamer, or any kind of storage vessel that allows air to circulate through it. Even those clamshell containers that they come in would be good to like restore them back in. But whatever you do with berries, do not put them in some type of container that is sealed, because it'll actually trap the moisture in and they will rot so much faster. Another really great reason to use that vinegar rinse is that it helps the berries. It'll help remove mold spores that may happen to be on your berries, which will keep them from molding so fast, which is a problem that I see quite often with berries. Never refrigerate your potatoes. I know many people do, or onions or squash or garlic. Those cold temperatures actually change the texture and the flavor of your food. With potatoes, that cold temperature will change that starch into a sugar. That's a problem in its own right. The more quickly, right? Leaving you with like this really gritty potato, sweeter potato than you probably really wanted. Now, while it's great to consume potatoes cold, like as after they've already been pre-cooked, which makes it a resistant starch, not so much for storage. While you're at it, know that storing, tomatoes, the same thing's going to happen. It's going to change the texture and the flavor, and you're going to lose so much flavor if you store those tomatoes in the refrigerator. So keep those on the counter as well. Crisper drawers in your refrigerator have different levels of humidity, right, than rest of the fridge, which can help optimize that freshness. While these drawers may seem like the perfect place to store odds and ends, I remember once going to a friend's house and opening up their refrigerator, and in those crisper containers were like all kinds of canned beverage. And I was thinking, oh, you're really not utilizing your fridge the best that you could. Utilizing them for produce will really help keep that fruits and vegetables lasting fresher so much longer. Some refrigerators will allow you to actually adjust the humidity setting for each drawer. If this is the case, then I want you to think about those skinnier and leafy, the skinnier vegetables and the leafy greens like asparagus, fresh herbs, greens, things like that, that are prone to wilting and losing moisture really quickly. Store those in the high humidity drawer. Now, those high ethylene producing fruits should be stored in low humidity because an open vent, less trapped humidity, right? So if the vent is all the way open on your drawer, you're going to allow the humidity to come out and that ethylene gas to escape. Those greens and the ones that wilt quicker, that's where you're going to want to close that off and not have that open, right? So you can hold that moisture in. If you don't have any kind of humidity controls at all on your crispers, that's fine as well. Just try to really focus on separating the ethylene producing fruits and vegetables away from your others so they don't spoil so quickly. Are your strawberries looking a little sad? Did your mangoes need to be eaten ASAP? Did your bananas on the verge of turning completely brown? Instead of forcing yourself to eat foods or throw them away, chop them up and freeze them. I mean, they make great to use in a smoothie later, or even thawing them out and using them for whatever you would like to. It's really a great method. This method also works really great if you're buying in bulk, right? And you know you're not going to have time to finish your finish those fruits. Freezing them is the way to go. Now, here's a great tip on freezing your fruits. This is what I love to do. I want to freeze my fruits individually. So I prepare those fruits however they need to. If they need to get washed, if it's banana peeled and cut into portion sizes that I use, and I place my fruit on a parchment lined sheet pan, and then I put that into the freezer. And once that fruit is frozen, I pull the sheet pan out, and then I put them into storage bags, and then I put them back in the freezer. And if I do it this way, then all my fruit will stay individual. And so it's easy to go in and scoop out a serving versus everything being like all clumped together. I know that it's blueberry season right now, so I do want to talk about blueberries a little bit. I learned this tip from a blueberry producer, and it really makes a difference. So if you go out and you go fresh blueberry picking, when you bring your blueberries home, wash them, place them out to dry. You want them really, really dry, but when you place them out to dry, let those blueberries sit out for 24 hours before you even attempt to freeze them. Leaving them out at room temp for that 24 hours really brings out the sugars in the blueberries, and they will taste so much sweeter. It's amazing. That is a great tip for blueberries. With the exception of basil, fresh herbs like to be stored in the fridge with a damp but not soaking wet paper towel to help keep them fresh. If you wish, you can store them, like a mini bouquet. Like I said, I like to lean towards a jar, or I like mason jars a lot. You can just place them right in there, put them in the refrigerator. It's nice sometimes to just drape over like a damp paper towel to keep them fresh, kind of like the same that we did with the scallions. This is true except for that exception of basil. Basil does not like to go into the refrigerator. And if you've ever done that before, I'm sure you're well aware of how it just like turned black, instantly black. So for basil, it likes to stay warm. So just putting that in some kind of container and setting it out on your counter is a great way to store that. Plus, basil likes to kind of pick up the scents around it. So if you store it in the refrigerator, it's going to pick up any scents that you have going on in there. Keep your celery from getting rubbery by wrapping it in parchment paper. Unlike that plastic bag that it comes in, the paper will let the ethylene actually escape and keep your celery crisp. But if you don't have parchment paper, at least take that plastic bag it comes in and open up one end so that we can let that gas escape. I personally, if my celery's gone rubbery, I take ice water, and I will make sure there's ice cubes in there, ice water, and I'll put my celery in there, and man, that can just really bring it back to life and crisp it right up. If you're planning on letting your leafy produce sit for a few days, if you're going to do that, then delay washing it and keep it whole. Just wrap it up like a burrito in some sheets of paper towels, or even in a hand cloth is fine as well. And then place it into some kind of plastic bag or something that's going to help keep that moisture, but leave the top open so it can breathe. And this technique should actually help you be able to store those leafy greens for maybe even several weeks. Bagged veggies like green beans or snap peas or snow peas can also benefit from doing the same trick by wrapping them with a paper towel and placing them in some kind of more closed container with the top open. Oh my gosh, this is a common mistake I see a lot, that people will invest in those mushrooms and bring them home and store them in that container that you bought at the store, right? And it's wrapped really super tight. And what happens is that moisture gets trapped and it causes the mushrooms to get moldy and slimy. I mean, they are fungi after all. The next time you bring mushrooms home, make sure you take them out and then place them in an open paper bag is great, or even just line a bowl with some paper towels and place them in the fridge, because those mushrooms, they really need to have that air circulation in order for them to last for you. Carrots and asparagus both tend to really dry out quickly. So they need that extra moisture. If you buy carrots and they still have leaves attached to them on the end, I want you to cut them off when you first bring them home, because those leaves are going to want to try to stay alive and they're going to pull nutrients from that main root. Next, put them in a container filled with water. I really like one of those glass snap locks. They're my favorite. I go to them all the time. Or you can put them in something and seal them with plastic wrap and store them in the fridge, and it'll really keep them really nice and crisp and hydrated for you. Asparagus, same kind of deal, like really likes to stay hydrated. You can take those stalks just like you would flowers and put them in some kind of jar and set them upright with water in there and place them in the fridge. And that'll really keep your asparagus nice and hydrated and crisp. Just keep in mind that fruits and vegetables, they start to die the moment they are picked. So try to eat them as soon as possible. The longer they sit around, the more nutrients they're going to lose. But with proper storage, they will last longer. Well, that's a wrap. So go enjoy your fruits and veggies. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join me today. I absolutely love getting to share with you. And I hope that you learned something of value about produce storage today. I also wanted to add how proud I am of each of you for taking the steps towards being responsible with our food waste habits. I mean, it's amazing how much food we do waste. Before I open us up to Q&A, if you are struggling with any kind of health issues, I would love to support you. I would love to offer you a no charge health strategy session as my gift to you for joining us today. And you can easily book that meeting if you're interested right from my website, which is www.earlybirdwellness.com, and that's BYRD, and just go to bookings and you'll see it there. Just to let you know what's coming up next, I'm so excited about this. September the 10th, I am starting my 5-week Revitalize Cleanse program is launching. So if you've been looking for a way to increase your energy, lessen your cravings, clearer thinking, you want to feel and look younger and shed years of buildup, then this is the course for you. If you're interested, send me a message or an email and I'll send you an invite for early bird pricing. July, I'm just really busy in July with some client-based programs only. But in August, I'm going to be back to my gifting back my free health educational programs. The beginning of the month, I'm running an email series that's all about meal prep. So let's make cooking a lot easier for all of us. And August 25th will be my next webinar. It's called Eat. How should we eat? What should we eat, right? What are the myths we've been told? So that's what I've got coming up in the next couple of months, if anyone's interested in that. And let me unmute you all so you can feel free to ask questions if you have any.
Hey, Allison. The one thing that I've run into here being in Florida is a lot of humidity. And I've had, and that's why when you're talking about don't put the potatoes in the refrigerator, that's why I started doing it, because they were rotting. So do you have any suggestions on help regarding that?
You know, I know, like, I have other friends that like live out in Arizona and they have no humidity. So sometimes they run into problems as well, right?
Yeah.
So if you feel like that, it's just, you know, if it's too humid in your house, and also, well, let me backtrack a second. You know what I've noticed as well, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but sometimes, especially in the summer where you're in a warmer environment, and we are as well, when you pick up your stuff from the grocery store, like if you aren't going home right away, or even if you are, like sometimes I'll notice things start to sweat,
Yes.
right? They're already sweating before they come home. So then when you're bringing them in, then, you know, or maybe they've already been sweating at the grocery store. You know, so the best thing that you could do, you might have to store them in the refrigerator. But you know, even if you dried them, you could try drying them, you know,
Okay.
actually wiping them down, because I'm
Right.
sure your humidity level's not that high in your home. They're probably coming to you with a lot of humidity.
Yeah, it's a challenge keeping it, below 50 some percent. But I mean, it very quickly can get humid in the house here based on the time, especially during the heat of the summer. So, and we moved here during the summer, and that's when I noticed it. Like all my stuff was rotting in the pantry. I'm just like, oh my God. So it's been a learning experience for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to do that, then absolutely, you know,
Okay.
if you, like, for me, I'm able to get a, you know, like I can store mine not in the fridge, but I
Okay.
also don't store them near anything else. And I do not keep them in that plastic bag.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I definitely take them out and I give them space around each other. So they're not, I don't put them in a bowl where they're all compacted, where that moisture might build between two that are sitting on top of each other. I definitely space them out.
Okay.
You could try that and see if that works for you, but I've learned if they're clumped together, they will rot.
Okay.
And they do a lot better as long as they can kind of get that airflow. Something that might work too is even just taking like a little rack, something I'll lift them up so they're not even sitting, where there's airflow even on the bottom.
Okay. That's a good point. All right, I'll try that.
You could try that and see. If not, then you're just going to have to keep them in the fridge. I mean, the
Yeah.
only drawback of that is just increasing, changing that starch into that sugar.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, well, everyone hang on for just a minute and I'm gonna hit stop recording, and then I want to ask you some questions personally.